You are listening to LatinxAmerica, a podcast focused on highlighting catalysts who are using, leveraging, or creating technology to help our community achieve more. With your host, Adriana Flores Ragade. Today's guest is Frank Carbajal. He is the founder and president of Es Tiempo and the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit, and co-author of Building the Latino Future, Success Stories for the Next Generation, which highlights inspiring stories from the country's most prominent Latinos. He's also part of the Ken Blanchard network of keynote speakers and a former member of the Silicon Valley Coaching Federation. Frank provides small business owners, CEOs, executives, managers, and directors with the framework and tools necessary to achieve their personal best. He holds an MA with an emphasis in human resources management and currently sits on the advisory board for the Silicon Valley Education Foundation. Frank, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't we start by learning about you? Can you share your personal journey with us?
My journey really started by, as many of us that have been interviewed, with our parents or grandparents being immigrants coming from foreign places, whether it's Mexico, Central America, or South America. My parents originally from Mexico, my mom from the state of Zacatecas, and my father from the state of Jalisco. Made it to the United States as immigrants, working the most humble job that you could imagine, picking fruit. And this started all in Imperial Valley in Southern California. Now, my parents were very fortunate to move up to Santa Clara Valley, now known as the Silicon Valley, whereas my dad, I saw him as a survival networker. He's a person that had just such an influence in terms of talking to individuals. And as I was exposed to that, I really noticed that he and my mother had what I call built-in tenacity and resiliency. And with that, I was the first to be a first-generation graduate from college. It wasn't an easy journey because I didn't have what you call a navigation stick. I didn't have something that really really was a gauge to college. So mentors early on didn't come until high school. I had, and today is a really good friend of mine, a high school track coach and cross-country coach who really took investment in me and really indicated that the only way in terms of success was through education. So I was very fortunate to be the first to graduate from college. But after finishing college, I really saw that injustice in terms of what to do now and what is happening now. And that was in 94 and 98 after finishing my master's degree. What I saw in terms of the injustice was reading negative stories and portrayals of our community. And our community was highlighted in a life that was so negative that I was really inspired to think of writing a book, and that was a dream. And really, the dream didn't come into fruition until 2002, where I thought of Googling an old friend of mine from the master's program, a person by the name of Harold LaFall, who was at my Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit. And when I Googled him, I noticed that he wrote a book on African American success stories. And so I right away called him up and I said, Harold, first, it's good to reconnect. And secondly, how did you write a book? And he became an automatic book coach where he says, hey, Frank, right now with African Americans emerging, that the Latino community is emerging even more in terms of purchasing power, upward trends. And at that point, I had enough not only motivation but resources to start writing a book. And through my network of individuals that are prominent Latinos, not only in the Silicon Valley but other regions throughout the U.S., I began that journey in 2004. And fortunately, during the time where folks started paying attention to our community, I was published in 2008 by Wiley & Sons.
So Frank, I know that you're also a very effective convener and you have a very extensive network of Latinx, not just here in the Valley, but also in other parts of the country. So can we talk about Es Tiempo and how it came about and what it means for our community?
Definitely. With Es Tiempo, it was really an inspiration from my father, who in 2000, when I had mentioned to him that I wanted to start a business and write a book, he says, Mijo, es tiempo. And when the business actually came to fruition in 2008, when my book was launched, I created this platform based off the book, Building the Latino Future, and it really was opening doors to other regions throughout the U.S. Because one thing that I focused on in terms of Es Tiempo and Latinx are networks, large networks throughout the U.S., which is Unidos Us, formerly NCLR, ASED, which is based in Washington, D.C., or the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. In terms of interviewing these top leaders, it gave me access to also talk to individuals that were rising stars and now today are stars. But Es Tiempo really is the notion that it's time today not only to work with individuals with talent, but connect them to mentor rising stars. So it really is reciprocal.
In mentorship, it's something that keeps coming back. Every single interview that I've done, I think it's been highlighted so far as a key issue in terms of helping our community move forward. So, speaking of helping our community move forward, what do you see as major challenges and opportunities facing the Latinx in Silicon Valley, or those who just want to join tech at this point in time?
Yeah, I was looking at the question and really found it as the most effective question as far as historically. And historically, it is a challenge in terms of Latinx and technology and Latinos filling these positions in technology because there are so many positions that are open. However, the challenge starts early on, and I'm talking about pre-K, K to 5 STEM programs in underserved communities where our population in terms of Latinos, for example, let's take Silicon Valley. In East San Jose, the underserved elementary schools do not possess effective STEM programs. And by the time these young individuals transition to middle school and high school, where we call A through G requirements in terms of algebra, they don't understand the language. And it is really difficult because I had to face it myself in terms of an individual that received tutoring in high school, and then I look at the big picture today, and I'm become an advocate. So today I sit on the Silicon Valley Education Foundation board in terms of pushing for the East Side Alliance the key factors of elevating education for STEM needs to start much earlier, because if we do not, we're going to continue to see tech gaps and see the continuance of HB1 visas, folks that that deserve the jobs, but the most important thing is we need to really continue to advocate for the Latino community as far as STEM programs early on, and with Latinx, we do have individuals that are great mentors that belong to a high-tech network, which is the Hispanic Information Technology Executive Council, and they lift up individuals. But the network is a great network, but in terms of more resources for our Latino community, we need to continue to pave the way in terms of really continuing not only to advocate, but to really be at the table. And I'm fortunate that I'm a person at the table, but we need many, many more Latinos, Latinas, Latinx at the table. How we do so is mentoring up, and continuing to really push that.
So you're saying it's a pipeline issue in which we need to really focus on homegrown talent. So investing resources, investing time in our community, not just here in San Jose, but in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in other parts of the country where we're seeing the same thing of
our kids, our Latinx kids, not necessarily going on the STEM route or getting the skills that they need in order to succeed and go beyond what their parents achieved. So, Frank, I see you as a convener, and I would like to know how the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit has helped build community for us.
It really has helped in terms of galvanizing folks and coming together. With the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit, the push really is to make sure that we understand that we all are talented in diverse ways. When I say diverse ways, I mean in technology and finance and nonprofit leadership and education. And so really I look at our community as not only coming together, but the commonalities that we share. At the end of the day, the common thread is really to succeed. And to succeed, we must succeed together. How we succeed together is by sharing resources. So the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit is a platform to provide not only these resources, but to provide the exchange of emails, of phone numbers, of not only the phone numbers of the emails, but really being in contact, because I want to make sure that the network sticks. That's the most important thing at the end of the day, and that's what the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit has provided to individuals to date.
And I have to say, some of the guests that have come are people that I interacted with during your summit about a month ago. So I'm just excited about the possibilities of connecting with more people. And the fact that you just have so many high achieving Latinx in one room is inspiring in itself. So thank you for putting that together. Who has been your key partner or partners in this venture?
So early on in 2009, I initially met with what I call an executive sponsor and mentor, Mr. Dick Gonzalez. He was a former executive at Safeway North America and also an interviewee in my book. He really inspired and pushed me and supported me to create the first Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit in 2010. That's one partner. The second would be Michael Lopez and Margarita Kiwis, who were very instrumental in pushing me to also have the summit. They both are former presidents, one current president of Hispanic Net. It's a technology networking coalition here in the Silicon Valley. Third, but not last, is my wife, Molly Carbajal, who really, it takes a person that's very supportive to not only pursue your dreams, but to make sure everything comes together. So my wife, Molly, has been a great partner.
And I actually had her in mind when I was putting together the questions because I met her and she's so dynamic and caring and the type of person that just gets things done. So it was great to also see her again at the summit.
Thank you very much.
You meet all kinds of people, not just through the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit, but just through your involvement in the different networks that you have here. If someone is thinking about taking the next step in their professional career, what advice would you have in helping them move onto leadership positions in tech? And I'm asking this specifically because you mentioned not just being part of tech, but also being at the table and helping make big decisions. And it sometimes being at that leadership level positions you to make those decisions and to have a larger impact.
For our community, the Latino community, I always stress that it's very key to be strategic. And if you are, for example, looking at starting a small business, taking things in smaller portions, find your niche and make sure that you're building a brand and most of all, having credibility along the path. Because what happens is, as one person, Maria Contreras-Sweet, had mentioned when I was interviewing her for my book, remember that all people are watching. So to have the credibility is not only key, but making sure that you really understand your business. So if you're, for example, on your own, a sole proprietor, I've coached sole proprietors. But if your business is an LLC, where down the road you really want to pitch to a VC or an angel investor, make sure that you're not acting out of desperation. Understand your product, because understanding your product and understanding passion is one thing, but understanding a product is one of the most important things, because it connects, and at the end of the day, it interconnects. And so that's 2. 3 is, if your business is more of a nonprofit or foundation, really understand that you have to be in it to collaborate, to share resources, because that really is the idea of a nonprofit or a foundation. Is, for example, if your nonprofit's in STEM and elevating Latinos in science, technology, engineering, or math, at the end of the day, it really is about collaborating with other partners. So as far as Es Tiempo, one of the things that I really stress is understanding that things take time. It doesn't happen overnight. For example, Es Tiempo started in 2008. Today in 2018, I learn things every day.
So it takes time, and as you counsel small business leaders on resources and frameworks, it's important to keep in mind that knowing your product and understanding who the product is going to serve is equally as important as having a passion for what you're doing.
That's correct. And I'd like to add one last thing about providing customer service and understanding your product, that diversity and inclusion, incorporating that into your product is most important, because you're dealing with people. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is really being inclusive in driving your business.
And when you say being inclusive, it's more than simply saying we care about the larger audience, but it's actually hiring the right people, being culturally sensitive. What other examples can you provide of how a business can be inclusive?
Disability factors. I'm a huge advocate for folks in the disability space. I am a father of a daughter who's disabled, so I have a big heart for the fact that a person, say, that isn't as mobile and moving around. I really feel that it's important that every person has something important to offer at the table, and that is inclusion. It's not being invited to the dance; it's really being involved in the process.
And that makes a big difference, because then you become a stakeholder yourself as well.
That's correct.
Besides you, and I think very highly of you, who are some of the Latinx movers and shakers in tech that we should be following, and why? Whether we're following them through social media or learning about their journey.
And I would more than be happy to introduce you that should be here also in the future to interview Guillermo Diaz, Cisco, CIO at Cisco, Alberto Yepes, who formerly at Trident, and now they're under a new venture capital firm, Mirna Soto. There are other individuals like Margarita Kiwis, who is a mentor of mine, should be here because these individuals not only help pave the way for Latinx tech leaders, but they do it with humanity, an open heart, and more importantly, as a servant leader.
I know that by attending the summit, you'll be able to connect with a lot more people that will inspire you and also lead the way for you, or at least share with you how they got to where they are.
Yes, and you mentioned Avalos. One of the things that makes him an outlier is he's a philanthropist, and a philanthropist in our community are key stakeholders to upward mobility.
Makes a big difference because they invest in the issues that they care about. And if they have experiences themselves with our community and understand the struggles, and they're able to see things through a different lens, not only when they care about issues, but also as they fund issues, which is also important. In your opinion, what are some emerging technologies that will change our world, and why?
I think artificial intelligence comes to mind, driverless cars, Siri, we all know of Siri and Alexa. I think one thing that would be important is to create a device that really connects with our community. Maybe a panchito, someone that really could elevate our voice through a sensory, or a lupita. And I think this is important because we really identify with voice recognition, sound recognition, and artificial intelligence is really the key to the future.
It's funny that you mentioned Alexa because we love Alexa. Alexa is in our home, okay?
Yes.
So she's a daily part of our lives.
Yes.
And I play music through Alexa. So when when I ask for a Spanish song, I usually have to say, "Can you please play Carlos Vives or
Yes.
or Burbujas de Amor instead of Burbujas de
Yes.
Amor, or play Carlos Vives," because she can't identify the fact that I'm saying Carlos Vives. So I had to say Carlos Vives or Burbujas de Amor.
Yes.
So it's really interesting that even the current technology that we have out there needs to be a bit more sensitive in terms of reaching diverse communities in a way that makes sense for us.
That's correct.
Last two questions. Who has influenced you the most and why?
I'd like to give you three quick names of
That's fine.
the folks that have. We all, of course, say our mom and dad. That's without question. But as far as professionalism, Ken Blanchard, Mr. Ken Blanchard, who wrote the foreword for my book, it was amazing to meet him because I read about him through the master's program, and to be in his living room and be under the Ken Blanchard Speakers Bureau and having him write the foreword for my book, Building the Latino Future, really inspired me and gave me the most confidence in the world to pick up the phone, email top thought leaders across the country, and without hesitation, understanding that I had the confidence to invite them to the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit. Number two would be Victor Arias, who was a moderator at the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit on May 19th. He is the co-founder of NSHIMBA, National Society of Hispanic MBAs, now known as Prospanica. And his story is amazing. In 1988 in Chicago, when he and his colleague Henry looked over at Latinos in suits, Latinas, in suits, he felt, wow, we need to do something. We're here, but we need to come together. And he created this large network of individuals across the country. Third is Margarita Kiwis, former president of Hispanic Net, one of the smartest people that I could say in the room. Margarita Kiwis, why I mention her is because in 2009, she asked me to be, for the very first time in my life, a keynote speaker for their Hispanic Net banquet. And I was very nervous for the invitation. And she asked me because I was, at that point, a newly published author. And I saw the honorees. And one was Linda Ronstadt. Another was James Gutierrez, the founder of Progreso Financiero. Now it's sold over to Oportun. But the reason why I was nervous is because Linda Ronstadt, an icon in our community, I knew that she was going to be sitting right in front of me during my keynote. And when I asked Margarita, well, I'm not sure I'm ready, she's like, you need to be ready. That's what creates leaders, is when you're asked to be uncomfortable, you need to get comfortable in under your own skin, and you're a great speaker. So it gave me all the confidence in terms of my speaking abilities, and from there, 2000 on, I really started a platform of public speaking. So those three individuals.
That's a great line of inspiration.
Thank you.
What's next in terms of your next play, your next venture? When is the next Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit? Do we have dates? And
we do have a date, and it's set for May 4th, 2019. And the theme is obviously May the Latino Fourth be with you. And it really is going
so
to
tricky.
It's going to be the 10th annual, so it's special, not only special for myself, but for my wife as well, and most importantly for all community leaders. And the reason why it's it's going to be very special is because it's going to have intersection. When I say intersection, the theme is really around executive, entrepreneurial, and nonprofit leadership coming together, intersecting. And so the keynote speaker is already set. His name is Thaddeus Arroyo, CEO of AT&T Business. And the two awardees so far, as you witness awardees in the past, we have Ana Maria Chavez, who's the first CEO of color for Girl Scouts of America, and Ralph De La Vega, former executive chairman of AT&T, two icons. And so I really am excited about the 10th Annual Leadership Summit.
And so am I. So el 4 de mayo, the 4th of May, and May the 4th be with you. So thank you again for accepting our invitation. Thank you for what you're doing for our community. You're one of the most avid social media users that I know, and what you post is very relevant to what our community is going through. So thank you for using your voice. Thank you for being an advocate, and thank you for being our 5th guest.
And thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your voice, because we really, at the end of the day, not only need a voice, but you act on it. And I always say, es tiempo to act on our not only our voice, but to provide voices for others.
Bueno, es tiempo y muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Here are some key takeaways from our conversation with Frank today. Like Frank, you can find ways to elevate our community by sharing your education or work success stories, either through a blog, a book, a podcast, or social media posts, to counter the negative stories others share when they portray our community. Also, find someone who's doing something that you want to do, like his friend who had written a book about successful African American role models, and ask them for help or guidance on how you can do something similar or land your desired role. If you're an entrepreneur, have a passion for your product, but you must also know your product inside out, because passion can only get you so far. Frank feels that it's important to continue to build a STEM pipeline, so consider volunteering your time like him to help a local school district or a foundation. Also, consider attending the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit taking place in May 2019. It's a great place to meet successful Latinx and potentially find partners, mentors, sponsors, or funders for your future venture. And finally, you can reach Frank through his website at svlls.com. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at LatinxAmerica and on Twitter at America Latinx, or email any questions or ideas to latinxamerica@gmail.com. Gracias y hasta la próxima semana.